QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. Enter transaction for income deposit for online cash basis business. This method will work for pretty much any business that wants to be dependent on the bank statements, on the bank feeds for the deposits in order to drive the recording of income. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. Here we are on our bank feeds test file. We currently have the open windows open. You can open the open windows by going to the view dropdown, selecting the open windows list. In prior presentations, we set up our bank feeds and we've been concentrating on the decreases to the checking account, the decreases including the vendor cycle basically up top. Now we want to think about the increases on the deposits, hopefully most of the deposits coming from customers and therefore being income. So we're down here on the income cycle type of activity. And we want to first think about the easiest way we can set up the deposits and recording of the income. So if we have a type of system where we can be completely reliant on the bank to tell us when the deposit happens and then record the deposit at that point in time, that would be the easiest system to use. So we'll start there and then we'll add some complexity to it. We talked about in the beginning of our bank feeds section here that we could, the full cycle would be to create an invoice and then receive the payment and then record the deposit. So if you're thinking about this system, we're basically bypassing that whole thing. We're not going to do that whole thing here. We're just going to wait until we get the deposit, not only recording the deposit, which is something we would normally do, and then check with the bank. We're not even going to do that. We're going to wait till the deposit clears the bank and then enter it with the use of the bank feeds. That would be like the easiest thing to do, but you'd be completely dependent on the bank to do that. Obstacles to that, as we started off talking in the intro to the bank feeds, would be that if you're tracking accounts receivable and entering invoices, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, how you can deal with that as we add complexity, and inventory. If you're dealing with inventory, then that will add some complexity to the system as well. So let's just look at the bank statement to get an idea of this. If we had a bank statement, this is just a mock bank statement here, and we're looking at just basically the increases to the bank statement and the decreases. That's all we have on the bank side of things. If we're going to be constructing our books directly from the bank, then what we would like to do is assume that all increases to the bank are going to be deposits from customers. And so if we assume that, if that is indeed true, and we're not worried about tracking anything else like our receivables or inventory or things like that, and it's a service-based business such as an online type of business could be, then we could just wait till it clears the bank, and then every time we get a deposit, we record it as income. Now you can see if we were to do that and there wasn't a lot of information on the banking side, we're losing information. We're not getting the customer per se unless it's provided to us by the bank, which it could be if we're using some kind of electronic transfers, and so we're losing some of that processing information, and we are not recording the deposit and checking it to the bank. We're waiting till the bank records the deposit and then recording it. So we're losing that kind of double check feature, and we're kind of reliant on the bank to record the deposits. But again, that would be the easiest kind of system to use. Now, this would be applicable, or this kind of system could be used by someone that does online work. For example, if you have income coming from Amazon or something like that, and it's going directly to your bank account, then they usually give you some description, and you can even get a little bit more detailed than because you know who it's coming from in that case. Whereas if you were just to receive an actual check and it was not electronic, you just deposit a check, then on the banking side of things, you're only going to see possibly the amount unless you go into the actual check and then verify where the check came from. Okay, so let's consider this. We're going to go back to our QuickBooks. We're going to go to the bank feeds, go into the view dropdown. The banking dropdown. We want to go to the bank feeds. I'm going to open the center. I'm going to go to the uncategorized items, and then I'm going to go to the cog. I'm going to add the type. I'm not going to add the classes. Note we have classes now because I'm going to assume you don't have the classes on. I won't focus in on classes. And then I want to go to the filter, and I'd like to just see the deposits now. Now, I'm not going to change the date, so I'd like it to be the oldest ones first, but it is what it is. I'm going to keep it at that. And so then if we go through all the deposits that we have, like if you're getting paid from an institution going directly to your bank account, then that could be the easiest thing to use, because that will actually give you some description on who paid you. So you'll actually have the customer, as opposed to some other type of payment formats, like if you just deposit cash into the bank account then you're not going to have, the bank won't know who the payee is, and you'll just see a deposit. And so in that case, you won't have any customer information. You won't be able to say what it was for. You'll just have to call it income. So for example, obviously interest income from the bank. So we'll talk more about that later. If you have Amazon, so if you work with Amazon, say like Amazon Prime, like you upload stuff to Amazon Prime or something like that, then they will often give you some more details. So now they're going to give you detail Amazon Media and so on. And so now this will allow you to set up a customer from them, because you got directly from Amazon to your account, and you could set up a customer, and you can also set up a different revenue account. You might call it Amazon, and you can even break out between different Amazon things you might do there, right? And you can break out like your Amazon Prime income versus, other income from Amazon. Now, if you have inventory that you're dealing with Amazon too, inventory is going to muddy up the water, but at least Amazon will typically give you more detail. If you work with Audible, so if you have Audible books that you sell or whatnot, then that's pretty clear. You can set up another line item on the income statement for Audible, and you can set up the vendor for Audible as well. So that's nice. If you work with Stripe, then that's going to be, and then obviously you have Google, like AdSense. Like if you're making money on YouTube videos or something like that, then that's pretty straightforward income, because Google will pay you directly, and you'll see, the Google account, and you can set up another one for YouTube income or whatever, and have Google go into it, or AdSense income, or whatever it is. And then you have Stripe. So Stripe, if you're using Stripe or if you're using PayPal, it's a little bit more complex then, because Stripe now and PayPal would be the intermediary. You're using Stripe or PayPal in order to facilitate the payment. And because of that, you have this information kind of from Stripe instead of coming from the customer like directly. It's a little bit more difficult then to get the customer information directly there. Now, if you only have a couple Stripe things that you're linked to, then it should be fairly straightforward, and you can see, the detail. There might be more detail in the memo here that can help you pick that up. So then we have now if you have like a mobile. Like if you just have a check that you deposited, then you then of course to pick up more information, you might have to go to you might have the canceled check that you'd have to then go to your banking information and check the canceled check, and that could be a way that you can pick up the customer information, because it won't be on the bank feeds itself in order to enter the information for like a check. So if you had a system where you scan the checks, you get a check, and you scan it with your phone or something like that, and you add it to the system, to your bank account. Your bank account doesn't have the canceled check in the bank feeds, but you could probably get that information if you want to add the customers by going to your bank account, having your bank open, and then getting the information in your bank account, online banking account. So then Amazon, Stripe, Google, now PayPal is kind of an issue, because it would be nice if you can set up your PayPal account to have bank feeds as well, like directly with PayPal. And you can do that online. You can't yet do it with the desktop version. So you won't see it on your checking account until you transfer from PayPal to your checking account, and you can just add the whole transfer as income at that point in time. However, you don't have the detail of what you got paid, and you have multiple things that are paying into PayPal, then it'll be a little bit difficult to break out that information so it depends on whether or not you want to break out that information. So you might take out the information from PayPal like monthly to record your monthly income, and you can just simply record it as income, or you can take that PayPal information and then record basically a journal entry that would reallocate from that PayPal account to whatever income accounts it was actually used for. Now, and you can download information, but you can't download like the QBO file that would upload the bank account information yet into the desktop version. I hope they figure that out soon. So hopefully in the future you will be able to basically link to PayPal and then you'll have bank feeds from PayPal, and it would be a transfer then from PayPal to like your checking account. And then you can just account for the two bank feed sides of things, which we'll talk about with a credit card at a future point in time. Without that, then you might wait. You could either just wait till it hits your bank account, which you can do a transfer monthly or weekly or something like that. And then when it hits the bank account, you record it as income, or you can take more detail from PayPal and then break out this deposit into the relevant income accounts that are applicable based on the detail that you get from PayPal. So that's basically most of the items here or a breakout. So let's just take a look at Amazon. Let's assume that this Amazon, let's assume these two Amazons are coming from like Amazon Prime or like video streaming. So then I can say, okay, let's go ahead and add this. I'm going to say the payee. Let's call it Amazon, and I might call it Amazon Prime. Let's say video or something like that, so that I have a payee. I'm actually going to make a separate payee for the different Amazon items, so that I can have further tracking between the different items. And I'm going to set that up, and I'm going to say that I want to quick add. I'll quick add the customer. It's going to be a customer item. I'm going to say okay. And then if I go to the customers drop down, customer center, then now we have Amazon as a customer. So Amazon Prime. So I'm going to go then to the bank feeds, and I'm going to say, okay, let's set up an account. And so I'm going to set up an income account, and I'm going to call it Amazon Prime Video. Saying I'm going to assume these coming from like a streaming on Amazon Prime. And so I'm going to say then this is going to be an income type of account. So we'll say it's an income type of account. And I might want to group it into like a total subtotal Amazon account. You could choose to do that, or just have it in another line item income. I'll leave it as it is, and I'm going to say save. And so we'll have that item. Now we could break out these three Amazon payments, this one, and this one. We could put them all into basically different accounts based on the differences in the payments that they're for, or we can assume, hey, they're all basically, I'm going to assume they're all basically the Amazon Prime Video payment. So I want all these three of these to automatically go to basically that Amazon Prime Video income account. So I'd like to set up a rule that picks up these three items every time, but will not pick up any Amazon, because obviously Amazon will be used possibly for payments and whatnot too. So I'm going to say, okay, let's do a rule. I'm going to add more details. I'm going to pull this to the side so we can see our data here, and then I'm going to add a rule. I'm going to add a rule, and then the rule is going to be, I'm going to say Amazon Prime Video rule. And so I'm going to say that when transaction meets any of these items, I'm going to add a few different items that it could meet. I'm going to say that either it matches, I'm going to say it needs to contain instead of match. And then I want to say possibly I get rid of the numbers, and maybe I say Amazon.company.eid, because I think that'll be there every time, Amazon.company.eid. I want to pick this one up too. I would like this one to be picked up. So maybe I say I want to have another rule so that it's a description if it contains Amazon, so I'm going to caps lock Amazon Media EU. I would like that one to be going to this account as well. And I'll do add one more rule and description, and I'm going to say contains, and this one is going to be Amazon. So what is this one? Amazon. So this, I already have that one, Amazon Company E. Okay, so I don't need that rule. So that rule is not necessary. So those two items, I'd like to go into this account, the payee, and then I would like the category to be Amazon Prime Video. I'm not going to have a class to it. If I had needed a class like we set up the personal and business, I'm going to say okay. So then we have this. So that looks good. So I'm going to say save here. And so we have recorded that. And let's look at our reports. Report drop down, company and financial. Let's look at the balance sheet first. I'm going to change the date up top to the customize. This is going to be 01/01/20 to 12/31/20. And then okay. And in the checking account, of course, if we go into the checking account, we've got this huge increase of the 385, and we're not and I'm going to close that back out. And then on the P&L, reports drop down, company and financial, on the profit and loss standard, if I go in that and change the dates from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20, we then see the Amazon Prime as a separate income line item. So then if I go back to the bank feeds and we go to the recognized items here, we now have these deposits that have been recognized for Amazon. So Amazon Media. So let's uncheck this one and let's just pick that and that and that and say I want to pick those up. This is Amazon Media. I can pick that one up as well. And then I'd say those look good. I'm gonna go ahead and add confirm with a batch, and I'm gonna say okay. And then if we go back out, 4 transactions added now. And then if I go to the balance sheet, we're gonna say double click there. And so now we have our transactions. Here's our increases that we added. And then closing this back out. If we go to the profit and loss, then it's all recorded in that one income account, even though we had slightly different information in the bank feeds. So it's all going into the one income account. If we double click on that, we get to our deposit form that we have here. So I'm going to close this back out, and no. And then if we go back to the bank feeds and go back to our unrecognized areas, so then, now it picked up the Amazon, one of the Amazon ones, but not the Amazon .co one. So I'm going to look at the rule then. I'm going to go to the rule up top. So here are the rules. You can get that by going to the rule up here. There's the one I want. I'm going to hit edit, but I'm going to pull the screen over so I can see the name while I hit edit. And then I'm going to hit edit. And then, so here's the rule that we had here. And so I'm not sure exactly why. So Amazon is spelled right. Let's get rid of the EDI and see if it picks that one up then. So it's going to be money in. Also note that if you're worried about it is money in as opposed to money out. So if you paid Amazon too and you just wanted to use Amazon, it should still, those rules should still apply only to the money in as opposed to the money out. So it shouldn't mix up the two. So I'm going to say save and okay. So let's say go back here. So now it picked those up. So if I go back to the recognized items, we have these ones got picked up now. So I'll go back in and we'll recognize them later, but the rule looks like it works. All right, back to unrecognized items. So then Audible. So Audible, again, gets paid directly. So you can see it and it gives you the name there. So that one could be pretty straightforward to add if you work with something like an Audible. So I would then say, let's add the customer, and I'm just going to call it customer, and let's call it Audible. Now Audible, and I'm just going to copy that and say there is our customer name and say okay, and then we'll add the account. So I'm going to add another account here because I wanted another sub account of income for another type of account. So I'm going to say this is an income type of account. And if you didn't have this information, if you didn't know who it came from, you would just call it income. You just group everything into basically income at that point. But if you have the more information, you want to break it out. And so I'm going to say this is income for, let's say, audiobooks. So that's going to be the name. And I'm going to say save and close. And then we could set up a rule for that one as well. We can hit the drop down and say, I want to say add more details. And that one could be a straightforward type of rule that we can set up, so we can add and obviously we can change the memos here if we so choose as well, but I'm going to add the line item, not a line item, I'm going to create a rule, and the rule is going to be, I'll just call it audible rule, and money in, all items, that's fine. I'm just going to say description, maybe I don't need it to match, but contain, and just really anything from Audible should be enough. So I think I would go there, then it's going to go to the Audible account, and that looks good. So I'll save that. And then there we go. Let's record it. And the transaction must have accounts assigned. So there it is. Okay. I think it didn't like that second line I made. So I'm going to go to the balance sheet and then say yes. And then if I double click on this, we have the increase to the checking account now for Audible. Now, and then if I close that back out, the other side's going to be on the P&L. If I go into the P&L, it's going to be in the Audible books income that we put here. Audible books income. Now notice we now have this uncategorized income, And that's because I added that second line. So if I double click on that, I have this line with nothing in it. If I double click on this item, you can see here because this second line got added and I never deleted it. So it put it to uncategorized income. So I could change this. I want to delete this line and delete this line. And then I'm going to save and close and say yes. And then close this back out. And so now that line with a 0 in it is gone. So back to the transaction, not the transaction detail, back to the bank feeds. If we go back into the bank feeds, back into the uncategorized transactions. Now obviously the ones that were saved here and the recognized transactions, now we have some of those other deposits that are going to be recognized for Audible here. So back to the uncategorized, we'll deal with those later. Now you might have like from Google or something, like say this is like YouTube income or something like that, or AdSense income. You can call it ads, whatever you want to name the account. We can do the same thing here. We can say that this is going to be the payee, adding a new payee, and I'm going to say this is a customer, and we're going to say this is Google. So Google, and we'll copy that and put that down here for Google. And they pay if they pay directly into your bank account, then it can be again fairly straightforward. The other side I can set up, and maybe I set up another account and I call it an income account. So it's going to be income, and then maybe we set it up for like YouTube income, or maybe you just call it AdSense income, whatever. Save that, and there we have it. If we wanted to edit this, then we can say let's go ahead and add more details, and we could then set up a rule for that one. This would be Google income, or like Google AdSense. And then we're going to say all, so that looks good. Or I can say then, let's say it contains Google AdSense. Maybe I don't need the 86. Maybe they changed that. I'm not. And then it's going to rename to Google, and then YouTube income. So that looks good. I'm going to save that. And then let's save that and say yes. So then if I go back to my banking, then of course, and it says save, and double click on this one, we see then the Google income, closing that back out. On the profit and loss, I'm going to update it. We should have another category. So notice we're able to categorize fairly nicely with these type of items because of the information directly on the bank feeds. So then if we go back to our bank feeds, then if I go to recognized, then we should have other items here for Google that is being recognized. So then I'm going to go back to our information and say, okay, Stripe, that's a little bit more confusing. Like where does the Stripe feed come from? You're going to have to figure out who you're dealing with that gives you the Stripe income, and you might have different kind of items. Now, maybe they differentiate between, maybe you can look at one of these numbers and that'll tie out to a particular person that pays you with a Stripe account, possibly. I'm not sure if that'll be the case, or maybe the memo will always be an indication of the Stripe income. So I'm just gonna add more. So if you don't know, and you just want to say, I'm gonna group everything in the Stripe income, maybe you set up an account called Stripe income, or maybe you call it whatever normal your Stripe website, maybe it's your website income or something like that, and you just say this is everything on, this particular website, or maybe you try to break it down in more detail. So I'm going to say the payee here, I'm going to add a new one and say this is going to be from the vendor, and I got to say Stripe, even though Stripe is kind of the intermediary. Stripe is going to be the income account. I'm going to copy that and put it here, and then say, okay, and then the account that it's going to be going to, you don't really know. You might have to do these a little bit separately. Again, you can have a general account where all those Stripe's going to go into, like your website account or something like that. So it might be website sales or something like that. And then you could say save that, and then we can then add the details again, add more details, and possibly make a rule for that one for Stripe. And then I could try to make a rule for Stripe and say if it contains Stripe, I want it to go there. Again, maybe you can use this number or something like that to differentiate the location, and that would be great. Then you can make a rule for Stripe that would go to these two different numbers, and you might then want to create a different vendor for those 2 different Stripe accounts as well. But I'm just going to put all Stripe transfers into one place right now. Then you could adjust the rule as we saw where the rules are if you wanted to get more detail and break that out. So it's going to go to Stripe, and I'm just going to call it website sales. So I'm going to say, all right, save that, and okay. So if I go up to the balance sheet, then we're going to refresh this, and we're going to say, all right, balance sheet, double clicking. We see Stripe income. There it is. Other side, if we go back to the profit and loss and refresh that, we should then have our, we just called it the web. Let's refresh it again. I don't see it there. Website sales isn't, oh, I put it as an expense. I miscategorized it. How can I fix that? Well, you'd go to the lists drop down, chart of accounts, and I totally did that on purpose, by the way, of course. And then I have the website as an expense, which we called website sales. So it's as an expense. I want to put it as income. So I'm going to right click and edit the account. And I'm going to change it to an income account. So it needs to be income. Save and close. And now it's lined up in the income area, hopefully. So my website account somewhere up here. And then I'm going to close it back out. I'll double check it on my profit and loss. And then the website sale. There it is. So there we have our website sales. Let's go back to the bank feeds. And so that was the website sales. The other big one, of course, is PayPal. So if you just transfer everything from PayPal, again, you might have all your money going into PayPal from one area, and if it was, then you could say it's all coming, all your PayPal income. You could just use it to transfer deposits from whatever one area it is. But if you have multiple different places paying money through PayPal, then all you can do is transfer it to your system, and you might just call it, you can call it a group of what the category that you have for the PayPal income, or you could just call it PayPal income and then break it out basically at a later point in time. So let's like kind of assume it's going to go into a clearing account, which will be PayPal income, and then I could reallocate it possibly. So I could monthly go in here and say that I want to say this is going to go to a new payee and go add. And then I'm going to say this is going to be a customer. And we're going to say this is, I'll just call it PayPal, which is really, again, not really the customer. This is the intermediary. And then I'm going to say OK. And then the account, I'm just going to call it a new account. And I'm going to say it's an income account this time. Properly done. And then I'm just going to call it PayPal income, which again isn't really the income category. We'd want to know why we got the income, who paid us through PayPal, but then I'm going to say OK here, and then I'll go, and we could make that basically the default again. So I could say, all right, let's add more details, and I'm gonna create a custom rule, and this is going to be the PayPal rule. So if it has PayPal transfer, it probably don't need transfer. And then I just want it to contain, and then it's going to go to PayPal, and that looks good. I'm going to say save, and then we can record that and say yes. And then if I go to the balance sheet now, we should have income, actually a positive cash number now, which is nice. It's nice to have positive cash. So there it is. And then the other side's going to PayPal. Closing this back out is on the profit and loss. Profit and loss. We then see PayPal. Now again, this isn't a great line item of income. What you could then further do is go into the PayPal and think about who actually paid you, and then break out this to the components who paid you to it. What the income was for. So you might get paid, by let's say you get paid by some gig job website or something like that. Then you can transfer it out of PayPal income and put it into the gig job. And you might even want to set up this PayPal as a balance sheet account if you plan on transferring it out. But if you transfer it out, you can do it with a journal entry. I can then go to lists drop down, company drop down, and then go to a make a journal entry, create a journal entry. That's not company. Make journal entry. And you do need to do debits and credits if you were to do it this way. So I'm going to say 073020, and I would say, okay, now the PayPal income needs to go down. So PayPal income is going to go down by that 30,000, and the other side is going to go to gig work website, and then I'll set that up, and then that's going to be an income account. And so I'll say it's a gig work website, let's say 1. And then I'm going to say okay, and let's say we got 10,000 from there. And maybe I want to set up another website for my other gig work website or whatever. So now I got gig work website 2 income, right? account that I'm going to be setting up. And I'll set it up as an income account, and it's an income type of account, and this should have been 10,000, and this would then be the 20,000. And then I can say save and close, and yes. And so now I remove the PayPal would be just like a clearing account, and now it's been broken out into the gig website income that I can then break out using the activity in my actual PayPal account. Now, if you start making payments from your PayPal account too, then it gets a little messy, because now you can have income and expenses in your PayPal account. You're gonna have to think about, you'll have to look into the detail a little bit more to break it out properly, because once it gets to your account, you've netted out income and expenses. Okay, so then if I go back to the bank feeds again, the other thing you might have is a mobile deposit. So you might scan like a check or have some other kind of app that helps you to record a deposit. So then this type of thing, if I was to look at it, I can't get any detail from this as to who gave me the money. So I would then have to possibly look at your bank statement, and if you have a canceled check there, you can look at the canceled check, and that would give you the payee. So I might say, okay, I looked it up on the bank, and I looked up the payee, and then I can say that this is a customer. And if I can do that, then I would like to, because then I'm going to say this is Thomas or Jones, let's say, and I looked it up. Right now, if you don't look it up, you can just say it's just income, and I won't have a customer, and then you won't know who paid you, but you know it's income because you didn't put the money in, so that's fine, and so it would be income, and you can just record income. But if you want the detail of the customer, which would be nice, if you got a check and you scanned the check or something like that, then go to your online banking, and you should be able to see the canceled check, and then you can add that information. So you can do that as you do your bank feeds. This one, and then the other side of the account could be whatever you work, of course, you did for that individual. So this would be more standard, kind of like if you do work and you get paid by check or something like that, then it's actually a little bit harder, because you're not getting that electronic transfer that actually has the vendor in it oftentimes. So you'd have to say this is an income account for whatever work you did, right? Consulting work or income possibly, and then we'll say save and close. And that kind of income you can't really set a rule for. Yeah, I can't set a rule because I don't know who gave it to me. Now you could set a rule basically saying anything that's an increase, any mobile deposit, just put it into income, but you won't be able to assign a customer. So if you want to eliminate the customer, then you could just say, hey, every time I have a mobile deposit like that, just put it into income, and then that's it. But again, if you scan anything that like if it's check that's not a mobile deposit or something like that, you don't have the customer, you have a little bit less information. So those ones you'll have to go in here and actually check out to the bank, look at the canceled check, and add the customer if you want to do it that way, and then add that here, and then save that. And then if I go to the balance sheet and say update, then the mobile deposit should be in here. So we got the deposit, and then the other side should be on the profit and loss. Once again, updating the profit and loss, and now we have our consulting income up top in the profit and loss. If we go to the customer center, we also have the customer here, and I can run reports then by this customer, which is nice, because if you don't put the customer in, then you can't run a report on who's paying you the most. You can't really see who's paying you. You just know that you got that money. So that's going to be the overview of the bank feeds if you want to rely on the bank. Now later we'll get into a little bit more complex transactions where you actually do want to enter the transaction in some way, shape, or form, or track accounts receivable information, or possibly deal with inventory kind of transactions, which of course muddies up the system and makes it so you can't usually just simply rely on the bank to record everything that's a deposit as income.